With us here, and we're going to get ready to get started shortly. If you do have questions or things that you'd like to share, you can use either the chat or the Q&A. I'll be following both of those live. And in just a moment, I am going to be getting started with I'm going to actually start broadcasting to YouTube as well. So we'll do that. Actually, it's at the top of the hour. So let's get started because we have a lot to go through. So I'm going to hit go live on the YouTube, and then we'll officially get rolling as soon as I see that it's going live. All right, welcome everybody. This is Dave with BizzyWeb, and I'm so excited to have you with us here for using HubSpot agents and assistants to do the boring but necessary work. As you all know, AI can save massive amounts of time and input and energy, but it's a little confusing, especially when you start talking about like what's happening and how all of the agents and assistants work inside of HubSpot, because some of them incur credits, some of them don't. And we're going to want to tie in on all of those things. And you might be wondering who the heck we are if you haven't seen us before. And if so, well, here's us. We are a marketing agency focused on B2B services and manufacturing. We do all of the things that drive traffic to our customers: advertising, marketing, email, content, social media engagement programs, website design, and then we help you close those deals through thoughtful outreach via CRM. So we're HubSpot partners, we're Google partners, and in addition to doing content and running BizzyWeb, we in Minneapolis here also engage and connect with Google and with HubSpot as HubSpot user group management, and also as a Google AI coach, which I travel the country doing on Google's behalf sometimes. So welcome everybody. We have a whole bunch of folks that have joined in just the past couple of moments. So I'm super excited to have you all here. If you have questions about today's event or as we're chatting, please today do use either the Q&A or the chat function to ask your questions. And if you did submit a question in advance, I have that cataloged and caught. And when we get to the end of today's event, we're going to go through those questions and answer them in turn. So please don't be shy. This is your time, and I'm super excited to have you all with us. As well, if you're watching from YouTube, you can also launch a chat. We're at youtube.com/BizzyWeb, and you can ask me questions in the chat over there as well if you're watching live over there. All right, so we got a lot to get through, and I want to cover all of it with Q&A, so we've got a lot. Let's cover first what assistants are, what they do and why they matter, and of course, agents. So once we start talking about a deeper engagement and tools in AI, especially in HubSpot, that get you more bang for your buck and that do some things in a more automated fashion. So you can think of assistants as literally like that intern that you're just sitting next to and you tell them, hey, what about this? And then the agents are that intern once they've walked away from the desk and they've given you some additional feedback and content without you directly telling them every single thing that you need them to do. We're also going to cover one of my favorite new integrations, which is the Gemini connector for HubSpot, because I think it's indicative and helpful for how you can use other AI tools. I know a lot of folks that are super into Claude, super into ChatGPT, super into Gemini, of course, and it's important to know that those tools can connect into HubSpot, and you can start using some deeper connections and getting more information out of them. I'll share some additional tips when you're talking through all of these things, and once we're talking about like general AI tips, as well as just kind of how to use assistants and agents. And all of these things are thanks in part to Michelle Stinson-Ross on our team, who has delivered similar talks through our HubSpot user groups. And we do have a HubSpot user group coming up in just a couple of weeks. So I'm going to give you details on that, because we're going to dig a little bit deeper on AI in some of those with more hands-on. So again, keep the questions coming as you have them today. You can use either the Q&A tool, the webinar chat, or the chat in YouTube. And be sure to log and register anything that you've got coming up. If you want to share, your LinkedIn profile, this is half networking, of course. So would love to have you log that in chat as well so that we can all get to know you. All right, let's get started. There's a problem in marketing, and especially in revenue-focused marketing, where we're kind of doing sales and marketing at the same time, which a lot of our clients, and looking at our list, I can see that a lot of the folks on this call have these problems. So we have to follow up on our leads. We have to clean data for our CRM to stay up to date. We need to route requests, new information coming in, update our CRM records, pull reports, answer repetitive internal questions. Don't get me started on all of the things and signals that you can get from marketing and the blog posts that you're doing and or the advertising or the A/B testing. The key thing to know is that AI helps speed up all of those things, and it really lets you focus on what matters in your business, which is what those buying signals are, the activity that people are showing and sharing with you. The beauty of having a CRM, especially like HubSpot, is that there are a lot of signals that you get from just interacting and connecting with the people that matter most in your business. And if you're not tracking that, if you're not using CRM, you're missing out. And so, taking completely aside just the fact that CRM helps you with all of this, imagine you had an AI assistant to give you that extra lift. And so I want to talk about two big things today, Breeze assistants and agents, but also I'm going to show you kind of the overall getting started area inside of Breeze Studio. So we're going to do a little bit of live demo across all three of these areas. All of these are powered by our unified smart CRM foundation, which of course is HubSpot. Full disclosure, some of these are require at least the pro versions of HubSpot to engage with, and some of them do consume credits with most pro level and up, actually even at starter level. Any paid version, you get a certain amount of credits that you can use for these tools, for these agents in particular. But it's important to understand where those are and how to figure out what kind of credits they might consume, especially before you set automated connections. So we're going to demo some of those as we go through. All right, so what are assistants? Well, in a general overview, you can think of assistants again as the HubSpot helper that is sitting next to you in your workday. So they're the intern that's sitting next to you or right across the desk from you, and you're asking it things and it's giving you input and help. So they help you get work done faster inside HubSpot. And as we look at what those actually can help you do, it digs deeper. And so what you're trying to get out of an assistant is like conversational chat. So you're in a contact record and you ask it, what was the last thing that this prospect talked to me about? Or what were the objections that they had the last time we discussed this particular project? What have they been doing? How many times have they visited my website? You can go into an assistant and just ask it at the top level, who's visited my website today? And see what's happening inside of that. And some of that's in prospecting agent, and I'll get to that as we get through the agents part. But if you're looking for speed, immediate actionable guidance on the marketing side, something to help you come up with drafts of blog posts. Note that I said drafts of blog posts. You don't ever want to generate content purely out of AI and publish it without significant editing. The idea of the human in the loop is very important in the world of AI. And even as the AI keeps getting better, the importance of organic human connection and using your brain to impart your expertise to your customers and not trusting a robot that's doing its best, but that is definitely not perfect to your end needs is incredibly important. So as we go through these, I'm going to show you a couple of examples, and we'll get into that very shortly. In general, all of these assistants, especially inside of HubSpot, they'll read CRM context or marketing context to help users find information, to draft content like email scripts, like coming up with an engaging advertising strategy, to set up a number of social media posts. Again, some of these things require pro level and up versions of HubSpot, and I'll do my best to point out where those are. So as you're looking to connect, ask questions, get feedback and input, that's what assistants do. The key thing to remember is that they're a sidekick. They're not your replacement, and this isn't something that you're going to use and expect it to completely take away the impact or the input of a human. Instead, what you can think of assistants as is almost like Jarvis when, if you're a Marvel fan, when Tony Stark was flying around as Iron Man and he was like, okay, what are the odds of me doing this? You were asking your assistant, and it's giving you feedback, input, content, context, and just the additional input to give you more of what you need. And John says AI plus HI, human input. Whoop, whoop. Yes, completely agree. Human input is your key. So make sure that you're inputting that content. And if you're thinking about, or even as you look at generating content, one of my big cautions, especially as I'm traveling with Google and talking about Gemini and some of the things that you can craft amazing content that seems very engaging. But again, if you're publishing robotic content or LLM generated content, Google and all other AI search, AEO is the act of um, answer engine optimization. And so that is LLMs like ChatGPT and Claude and Perplexity and Gemini and all that. They will not rank purely robotic content. And you might get lucky on a couple of times until it catches on, but really there are signals and there are fingerprints to AI generated content that will lead Google especially to devalue or outright not list that content. So make sure that you're always inputting some of your own. You can think of it as an assistant that will help you speed up the process, take your notes, do an outline or a high level overview that lets you get deeper and generate better content faster because it'll identify blind spots brilliantly. It'll identify content that you haven't thought about. When we get into agents, you'll be able to analyze your competitors' websites and look at some things that way. And so very, very helpful on those notes. So you can think of, there's a few big things that I really love using assistants for. One of them is summarizing sales calls or notes. So as you can see in this screenshot, as we're going through, we're literally going through, this is a prompt history. And so you can see that that's a great little killer tip. So as you go into the three dots in the upper right, if you're looking for things that you've done before, you can go in to the prompt assistant and you can ask it specific things. So in this example, we're looking for information about the Lee Products Company. Prepare me for the meeting. And it's giving us detail and feedback that we would have seen. We could have gone into that account. We could have gone through the all activities, scrolled through the tabs for notes, emails, calls, tasks, and meetings. We could look at all of those things, but instead I just asked it, help me prep. And so as we went through here, here's the overview of the company, the relationship to the people that we have in these opportunities, what the deal size is, what the context and content is. And it's very helpful. And again, so you can see, you can go into that three dots and then go down to prompt history to see all of the different kinds of things that you can do. So very, very helpful and very quick. Next, you can pull quick answers from your CRM data. So as we're looking across this, I'm inside of the Breeze Assistant and I am literally asking it, help me find information and details on this contact, on this content, on this deal that I just submitted. And so as I give it that information, It's digging much deeper and it's giving me that detail at a glance. And note, I was cautioning pretty heavily about being careful with the content that you get from any assistant or agent and publishing it on the web or using it as your content. But you need to keep a weathered eye on content and context that comes from anything that you get inside of these assistants. So in this case, it's giving me all of the different input and details that I had from a recent meeting that I recorded with an AI recorder. We use Ask Elephant at BusyWeb, and we also use Fathom, and we also use Gemini's meeting recorders, depending on who we're with and what kinds of content we're trying to digest. You get all of that information here. You want to spot check it though, because just because it's coming from a limited data set and it's using your actual information as the training information for that particular prompt, it still might hallucinate sometimes. And you may have added multiple deals, and one of those deals may have gotten deprecated or merged, and things might have gotten a little wonky. So make sure that wherever possible, you're spot checking, fact checking, and revealing that data. So if you were a BDR or someone that's literally dialing as a business development representative and you're trying to generate content, you want to check in with the sales rep that's going to be doing the additional following and calling and make sure that the context that they're getting out of that tool is correct and not hallucinated. Because sometimes it'll pull things in that you may not intend. And as we all know, customers love it when you know them and you are speaking their language. But if you pop in a little faux pas and tell them something like, how's Mary doing? And Mary left the organization 7 years ago, that's probably not a great overview, right? So make sure that you know as much as you can and just really verify the data that you get. Another thing that I love doing with agents or assistants is coming up with an overview on what my ideal customer profiles are. So the ICP agent is relatively new, and this is separate from the persona tool inside of HubSpot, by the way, and inside of some of the other contexts that you get. But you can fill out a bunch of information, link in some websites that match who you're trying to reach, and this assistant will flesh out that ICP, that ideal customer profile, that you can then use for things like the prospecting agent. So as we get into that, I want to share a few of those things as well. So let me just get in for a very brief moment and I'll share, because one of our favorite friends here is, oops, I went too far ahead. This is an example of an assistant at work. So I've got this in here. And again, I can go into the dots and I can go into prompts and it'll give me searches for prompts and I can actually review a number of things. So prospecting, oh, no prompts found in there. Instead, let me just go back in here because I think I'm reviewing this through a different account than I normally run for demos. But if I just go, how did our last call go? And it's going to look through the calling records inside of this record for this prospect, this customer, and it's going to give me some details. And so it's going through, found the context. Now I'm checking the latest associated meeting or call. So I can give you some recap rather than guessing, which is very nice. We had our last big call on the 29th of January. Now that again, I know that I've had a number of conversations with John since then. So I need to keep track and task that. So it's not perfect, but we resolved some content issues and we talked about some things inside of there. And it gave me a high level overview on what I need to know. And there's assistant tab up in the top of everything that we're doing or that we see. And so I can review all of those things from up here. So anywhere you are inside of HubSpot, you can go in. And actually, I'm going to skip over to our demo account so that I can give you more detail inside of some of these. So let's go to, again, I'm in Assistant. I'm going to just go to Yeah, well, let's go to deals so that I've got something meaty that I can play with. And so radio result ownership, here's a product that we've been working with. Note, this is a demo account. These are all fake accounts. And so I'm going to now go into my assistant and it pops right up here. And then what are the main objections for this deal and how can I help resolve them? So it's going to look through details and very quickly it gives me the content and the context to help me get to the next step. Not seeing any questions yet. I do have some feedback and some input that I'd love to connect with you. But if you do have specific questions that pop up as we go through today right now, please go ahead and pop those into either Q&A or chat. So I confirm the deal schema has a dedicated closed lost reason field, but there's still no activity on the deal itself. So I'm checking the associated deals. Again, this is a demo deal. So I found the associated buyer and company plus the deal owner, and there's still no stated objection field. And then I'm checking the deal, the associated contact. Okay, the lack of recorded discovery. And then, okay, so it's giving me some details, how to resolve the information that you're trying to solve quickly. So one of two things, either the buyer hasn't voiced concerns yet or the concerns exist but haven't been captured in HubSpot. So here's how you do that. Run a focused objection check-in, and it gives us right here a clear script on how to identify objections. I can pressure test the economic case, clarify the buying process, document every signal, or give the rep simple follow-up instructions. So pretty handy and very detailed. And I think I've got more prompts in here. No, it didn't, I can add new prompts in here. So since I haven't done these since we reset this inside of the demo, it doesn't have my history of prompts. But as we go through, that's how you would see additional prompts as you go through and see kind of what you've done in the past. So you can think of this as a pre-built prompt library. So that's a high level overview of how assistants work. So if you have questions about assistants, again, go ahead and ask that inside of the chat or the Q&A. And as we go through, would love to give you more detail and information on that. So let's keep rolling and talk about agents. So as we're looking through the deeper level of what agents can do. Again, this is that next level person that's giving you more information, more detail, and that is going away and doing a little bit of work themselves on their own without your direct input. So assistants, you ask a direct question, it gives you a direct answer that is directly in line, and you are prompting all of those things. Agents will do a little bit of input on your behalf and take additional steps. So it's a great way to get more feedback, more input. And one of the cool things with agents in particular is there's an entire directory and um, inside of the agent tool, there's even a marketplace for some agents that you can pick up and use. Some of these incur credits, some of them don't. Generally, the beta ones do not until they go live. So if you see a beta, that's kind of free reign to tinker with it. But know that if you fall in love with it, you're going to be paying for it at some point. So when you think about agents, one of the things you need to think about is governance. Because if you set an agent and you set it off on whatever you want, you can kind of think of this as you have your rockstar intern, you've given them your credit card, and you told them, go and do what needs doing in order to fix this up. As you can imagine, that intern might use that credit card and go and do a whole bunch of things that you may not have intended. So if you set the guardrails with detailed instructions, here's what you can do, here's what you shouldn't do, here's when to check in with me before doing the next step, which is a great stopgap in order to make sure that you're not burning credits you don't intend. Setting up learning cycles where you approve what it's doing versus just letting it go crazy. And again, remember, human in the loop is incredibly important because we want to make sure that everything that we do is very important. So, super fun, super interesting, and a great way to get the content that you need generated. So, super fun. So, agents then can take on some of the repetitive work for you in HubSpot. So, think of this as a great way to generate additional content or context and to think for you at a different level. So, you're setting it a goal and you're trusting that tool to connect and engage and give you more input, more feedback, more of those next steps. So as we think about those, that's repetitive multi-step executions. So operating using predefined inputs. So giving it strict instructions and looking at, okay, well, you can use this particular tool, but you can't go further than this step. You can automate end-to-end tasks in the background. Again, you want to be careful with how that works. And then you need to execute actions like writing to records and sending emails directly into your HubSpot account. So that makes it easier, that makes it helpful. And the things that you can give it are incredibly useful at all levels. So some of the examples that I like, there's a customer agent inside of HubSpot's service tools that you can use to look at support inquiries. You essentially load up frequently asked questions or a customer knowledge base, and it'll take care of and answer some of those things without input and give that customer very defined input or feedback. So it can be super helpful that way. Prospecting agent, which I'll demo in a moment, really helps you to dig in and outline the deals and prospects that are coming in to your company. And so as a sales rep, you can kind of use this as your AI starting page for working on a daily basis inside of HubSpot to review any buy signals that you're getting from your content and from your CRM and your marketing and all of the other things that you can do. The data agent gives you deep dive questions. It analyzes CRM data, call recordings, things like how are my reps doing? Are there any coaching tips that you can give me for rep X? And so you would go in and say, hey, I noticed that Bill hasn't closed as many deals as he normally does. Can you analyze his call information and tell me if there's something going on? Like maybe Bill just stopped doing prospecting follow-ups or maybe there's a issue or something that just changed that you want to assign or talk about. And company research agent, let's go deep. And when you're prospecting as a sales rep, you need to have plenty of information and data. And so if you use the research agent, it will tell you, here's the press releases that have been submitted by this company, and here's the technology that it looks like this company is using. So they use HubSpot and they use WordPress. So you might want to reach out to them and encourage them to use HubSpot's website builder instead of suffering through WordPress more. It looks like they just had a leadership change because there was a LinkedIn post or an update that you want to focus on. Again, this is more pro level content. And so you might not get that if you just have HubSpot's starter tools, but all of this is good content that you can use. And like I said, there's also ways that you can use other tools, and I'll show you a demo on how Gemini works, for example, in a few minutes. So as we go through, here's some examples. Of course, research and data. As we look through this, this is an example of using the company research agent. I am pulling through and asking it, what do I need to know about this company going into this sales meeting? And so as I'm building that content, it gives me a high level overview, super easy. And it goes through the homepage, it goes through customer sentiment, it verifies leadership and business size. And then it will actually autofill that information inside of the company record so that I've got that data and that detail. One of the other things that I can do inside of this agent is I can literally have it give me, what are the pain points based on what our common ICPs are encouraged to, or what we're looking for. So at BusyWeb, for example, we're always looking for folks that are involved in marketing and may have had a marketing change, because a lot of times we'll come in and we'll be the marketing department for that company at about the cost of a hire. So if they just lost their key marketer, that gives us a good input. Or if it looks like there's a lot of room for growth, or there's a lot of activity that people are looking for, we can help and we can actually sell into that and say, what if you didn't have to worry about this at all? What if you had a pro company that actually knew how to do all of these things and could give you all of that feedback, input, and deliver you qualified leads, right? So as I'm looking through that research, through the company research agent, that's super helpful. Inside of one of my favorites, the social post agent, I can generate content based on either specific content that I already have in my website or on a new blog post that I've generated. I can go through and get high level overviews. It'll generate AI imagery and AI content. You can and should absolutely edit that content before it gets published to make sure that it is valid and helpful and useful for those ICPs. Again, there may be some things that it's hallucinating. I like this one. One of the common things that you see with AI agents is that they tend to use M dashes. So I explicitly go in here and I say, don't use M dashes in my social posts because it looks like AI generated it. Help me give me an overview on everything that I need for a good published calendar in order to take advantage of some seasonality that I have coming up. It's Memorial Day this weekend in the US. So we want to probably avoid Monday because nobody's going to be here. It's going to be out at barbecues, probably shivering in Minnesota at least this weekend. So all of those things you can do and connect. And then, like again, inside of Customer Agent, as I'm giving it details, I can go through, and this is what it looks like when people are asking questions and we're getting answers back live based on our knowledge base. So Notebook LM inside of Gemini does this very well, where you're getting a specific context, but this does it inside of HubSpot. And you don't need to load specific things in because it knows everything about the customers that you're trying to connect with because they're in the CRM. So you have a pre-built notebook of all of your best prospects, all of your contacts, all of your customers in this case. And so you can choose to engage with them. You can have it automatically raise up an issue. So if a customer seems like they're incredibly cranky when they're chatting with you, like if it comes back in all caps, that might be an automatic filter over to the real people. If you're seeing some good feedback and there's sales signals that are coming in, like I really need to expand my blah, 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 you can have that ping the sales team. And or I can see and just kind of get an idea for how happy people are generally as a sentiment based on either thoughtful outreach or the sentiment of the questions and the chats that I'm getting in from people as they visit either my support page or the homepage and clicking on support. So very good high level kind of overviews on what you get. So real world, you can use this as a prospecting engine, right? So through the data agent, I'm evaluating and looking for accounts that have a good ICP, ideal customer profile fit. They're in the right revenue range. They appear to be ready to talk based on their input. They've visited a number of our webinars. They've attended or clicked on a bunch of our social posts. They may have even scheduled an appointment with a sales rep. They are ready to talk. And so from that data agent, I'm going to enrich with the research agent to get more data on that customer. And so I can see, well, it looks like you just had a significant acquisition in the past couple of months. Super excited for you on that. I bet that imparts a bunch of new complexity that you need to shore up, or you have a lot of new messages that you need to flesh out. And so if you're the marketer inside of there, you could just have it build that. Or if you're a sales rep trying to engage and connect with real messaging, that'll give you healthy, easy talk tracks that are good conversation starters. And then inside of the prospecting agent, generating a personalized first email based on what that detail is. Again, you definitely want to review that information before you send it because it might say something that you didn't want it to. And you have to make very carefully sure that everything that you're doing is within the parameters and the boundaries of just what that customer is going to expect. So let me go over here now, and I'm going to go back in again to, I think I was in my overview here. Yep. And so inside of this one, I'm going to go into, let's just go to my prospecting agent. And so, whoop, I need to join the new experience. I'm in prospecting agent. And so customers already enrolled. I can see where they're at, email sending today, all of that stuff. Actually, I think I need to go into my own, I'm going to go into data agent on my side so that I can see what this is. But inside of data agent, I have a easy prompt library that I can see inside of here. And again, I went into data and then data agent for this. So I'm outlining what the common things are. So what their primary CRM and marketing automation platform is, what their website and digital presence looks like, manufacturing or industrial focus, modernization fit. So these are all kind of pre-built. And this is going to go through all of the data that I already have in my CRM and identify those good ICPs. From there, I can launch and generate new content inside of there, and or I can go into, for example, the prospecting agent, and this is the reporting side. So it's telling me kind of what my outcomes are. So I had 1247 enrollments. Out of that, I had 248 delivered emails and 83 opens that turned into 7 prospects or clicked emails, right? So I can kind of generate that. I can add manually. I can automate those inbound leads to connect up and give me good next steps and kind of see high level everything that I can do inside of that agent. So very, very easy. And when you're digging in, it makes it kind of a almost no-brainer to generate some of these. And I do want to go into, and I'm going to share a little bit more about Breeze Studio in a second, but as we think about how all of this works, you just go into the AI tools, into Breeze Studio, and I'll show you where that is in a minute. But what we're looking for is something that's going to help me be additive to my sales or marketing processes and something that I'm going to carefully curate. So whether it's the social posting agent, the content agent, the research agent to go through and take, if I'm doing an engagement or, coming up with some prospects that I've generated out of Apollo or Clay or Zoom Info and doing a first round of verification before I send my sales team to engage with that person or invite them to an event. That's going to give me lots of good input to base my decisions on. The teammates that you need by account are as follows. For conversational information, drafting, data, and guidance, you're going to want to use a Breeze agent or content. So the assistant is conversational, the agent is more complex task and execution, and it goes all the way to generating that information. Again, you should be spot checking, you should be connecting. The interface of a chat window alongside your active workspace versus pre-configured workflows running behind the scenes, agents versus assistants. Um, Assistants have instantaneous response, whereas agents are running against specific actions, so they take a little bit more time, especially based on specific complexity. And assistants live where you're working in that panel on the side versus Breeze Studio, and it runs in the background for agents. So as far as, again, keeping humans in the loop, we're going to look for start small, set good guide rails so that people are getting the content and the context that you're expecting from them, and thinking about what you're actually trying to accomplish. So what those next steps need to be. Super helpful. You want to make sure that you're iterating these prompts, these outlooks, this content. You want to never just set and forget, especially like ICPs that you're using to inform data agent or the content that you're getting. The things that are working, you want to get more of. So this resulted in an absolute scorcher of a deal or a lead. And so I want to make sure that I get more of these. And so you can go back to that agent or that assistant and tell it more of this, please. And encourage your team to use these things. With agents, this can get expensive because some of these do consume credits. So make sure that you have an AI policy where you're setting and checking and getting through that. So at this point, there's probably some common questions that everyone has, like how are HubSpot credits consumed? Can I limit who has access to publish agents? And what's the best tasks to automate first? And so I think I'll answer those in line here. First, when you're inside of, and actually I want to get started with Breeze Studio to answer some of these questions. So as you go in, you want to go to the Breeze Studio, and I'm actually going to bring this over and go in here so that I have that info here. So down at the bottom, there is a tab for Breeze. And so I'm going to go to the tab for Breeze and down to Breeze Studio. And then I can go through a number of different things. It has a quick start, so to add an agent, an assistant, or create something from scratch. I can see research or recent ones, things that are trending from the marketplace. So company research agent, data, customer agent, um, deal loss agent. What went wrong? Customer health, ICP assistant. As I look at this, when you click on any of these, it gives you a high level overview on what all of these things do. You get little previews. Sometimes you have videos of what that does, and it can be very helpful. And then it tells you what your content and what your pricing is on each of these things. So let's go back to like one of the big ones. Since this is in beta, it doesn't incur credits. But if I have a like data agent, it tells me where I am with this, and it'll give you the details and the overview on the pricing. So you can see your credit rate sheet here. So generate response to one prompt for one record incurs 10 credits. Now, as a general rule of thumb, most pro versions of HubSpot, so if you have Sales Pro or Marketing Pro, that usually comes with between 3,000 and 5,000 credits, depending on when you signed up. So as you can see, if you're going through and you generate 300 results, that's going to burn up 3,000 credits right there. So it's easy to have this get out of hand, which is why you want to set your agents firing prospect or the firing criteria as being very specific. So you don't want to just have this come in for everything. Or if you're doing a massive outreach or an advertisement, if you have 50,000 contacts and you're going to try and enrich all of those, that would get expensive fast, right? So you want to make sure, and that's how you find where the pricing is inside of that. But again, I'm going through here. I can see there's all kinds of helpful resources along the bottom, and you can see the agents that you actually have, the assistants that you're working through, and inside of your inbox, you can see other details or content on just what you need to know. So this is where you're going to see information if an agent or an assistant has been updated or changed. And so that's also a helpful thing to know so that you can build out the next steps as you go. One other thing that I want to share is inside of most things inside of HubSpot, you can actually integrate with tools like ChatGPT, Claude, or Gemini. So I want to show you what it looks like when you have a integration with HubSpot with Gemini. And so this is in beta and this doesn't consume credits, but I can connect my Gemini to HubSpot. And so there are a number of steps that you need to do with this. You need to have Gemini, or you need to have Google Workplace, and you need to know and set up. So you have to be friends with your admin in order to activate this. It's actually a beta tool. And so once you have that set up, I just went in and I typed HubSpot, who's visited my website today? And then literally last visit 3:19 p.m. yesterday, 60 visits by Will. He works here, so I'm glad he's been visiting our website and reviewing things. But you can see at a glance all of the content inside of there. So you can do all kinds of things. You know, what are my most recent emails with someone? What did I do with this person? What are their objections? A lot of the things that you can do inside of assistants, you can also use Gemini for. One of the benefits of using Gemini is you can also load that content into other things like notebooks and or just get more broad or overview. And it's a good way to actually save some credits inside of Gemini or inside of Breeze. So overall tips. As you're thinking about how all this stuff works, of course, we're going to have questions and there are watchwords that I've already teased a little bit, but I want to kind of go through high level. First, my general rule with all of these things is to start small and make sure that you're not setting, especially in agents, just kind of an unlimited price tag. So don't just tell it, go ahead with all of my contacts, especially if you have 30,000 contacts in your list. So start small, pick one task to test, and just play with it. Make sure that you've got your human oversight. The human in the loop is incredibly important. And then you want to encourage team adoption at all levels. So in your team meetings, like I used Breeze for this thing, and I found this great signal that I want to focus on for our next step with our clients. And so highlighting that within your team is going to lead to more and better engagements. All right, so we have some Q&A, and before we get into the actual Q&A, again, this is where you can feel free to log or ask questions through the Q&A tool or the webinar chat. But I'm going to get into these questions in just a second. I do want to, before we get in case folks don't want to hang out for the entire Q&A, that we've got a deeper dive into lead scoring using AI. So how to identify high intent buyers faster. This is a HubSpot user group. So if you're already part of either the Twin Cities HubSpot user group, the Manufacturing Midwest, or the Fractional Leadership user group, those are all run by BizzyWeb. And we're doing a joint event across all three of those HubSpot user groups. So check out Lead Scoring in the Age of AI. In order to register for that, what you want to do is just go to BizzyWeb.com, click resources, and then go into events and register right there. Okay, that's it for my last advertisement. So if you do have questions and things and you want to follow up, you're feeling bashful, you can either connect with me at hello@BizzyWeb.com or at Dave@BizzyWeb.com. So Will asks, what are some of the best ways to utilize assistants and agents to re-engage with older sales prospects? So this is one of those fun ones that I like running against an agent probably, because what I'm looking for is I'm looking for what Will specifically said, some of the prospects that I haven't connected with in a while. So I'm going to go in to my prospecting agent probably, and I'm just going to ask it, re-engage old prospects. Or I'm going to go into my deals and I can go into the Breeze assistant at the top and just say, which deals haven't I connected with in more than a month? And it will list those right in the sidebar. It'll give you a link to that deal so that then you can do a follow-up. We could go one further step with some of the other agents and ask it to just send a reconnect email for folks that you haven't talked to in more than 3 months, for example. Again, this is where you want to be careful and you want to spot check so that you're getting the right kind of content out without spamming. Um, let's see, Nancy says, our team uses Claude, ChatGPT, and Gemini. I'd like to understand how to get the most out of HubSpot's agents so I'm not duplicating effort. First, you could integrate Claude, ChatGPT, or Gemini with HubSpot, and that's all available through the tools and in the setup by the gear in the top of HubSpot. You can import and generate or use the connectors for all three of those tools. I would probably pick one so that they're not battling each other. And we're a Google Workspace shop, and I'm a speaker for Google. So a lot of times I just like using the Gemini stuff. If you have Google Workspace, you already have the pro version of Gemini, which will save you money in the long run. So over like spending the $20 a month, either Claude or ChatGPT versions, for example. So I'd probably start with whatever you already have a paid version of for everyone. Use that as the connector. And then there's massive amounts of data and information on how to use all of these things. One of my favorite things to do is literally just ask the agent. So I go into Gemini and say, how should I use this inside of HubSpot? And it'll give you a high level overview on everything that you need with easy links into doing that. So that's a great one, Nancy. Anya says, where can this hurt and help in the overall space of HubSpot? Are all of the agents useful, or do you find that certain agents work better? The ones that we've highlighted, the data agent, the prospecting agent, the customer service agent, those are the ones that are probably the biggest immediate wins. So that's why I demoed those. But I would encourage you to go through the marketplace and look for some. One of the key things is inside of marketplace, you're going to see reviews and total number of installs. So if it has a high number of installs and a good amount of positive reviews, that's probably a good signal that it's something that's worthwhile. Also make sure that you're checking the total number of credits consumed and or what the real price tag is on that. So those would be the criteria that I would use before testing them. I would also encourage you not to just turn those on for the entirety of your team and maybe demo a few to make sure that you're getting the content back that you're looking for before you flip the switch and go crazy. Because as we learned, it's easy to ingest or consume a lot of credits without intending to, and that could get expensive. So Brandon asks, curious about pipeline and prospecting efforts and ability to quickly create email and content flows. That's a good point, and I didn't cover that. So let's go into, I'm just going to go into, for example, my content hub into website pages because I want to demo something that I like, and I'm in Biglytics. So I'm in the demo account. I think this will work. Let's see what we get out of Website Grader. So I'm in my page. I'm going to go here. I'm going to go to remix content. Yes, beautiful. So if I go into file and then remix content, I can have it generate a blog post based on any other blog post, any page, any landing page, or whatever. I can have it generate a marketing email. I can have it generate a series of social media posts, or even a SMS campaign, a call to action, a landing page, or a form based on what I have. It gives you up to 6 total things that you can do inside of any given remix. And then when I click remix, it's going to give me a pop-up, and then it's going to demo and generate the start of each of these. Now, none of these are done and ready to fire, but what it's going to give me is an overview that I can then flesh out further, right? So if I click on this one and I go into it, it's going to give me more detail, and I can build all of this out and finalize it to fire off all of that detail. Now, I'm in a demo portal, so I can't get too deep inside of this. We use this quite a bit inside of our internal marketing, for example, to generate drafts of social posts that fit multiple different things. So I want an Instagram post, a LinkedIn post, an X post, and maybe a YouTube short. And it'll help me with all of those things on the fly. So great question. Thank you very much, Anya. or Brandon, sorry. Ruth asks, cleaning up data, updating records, pulling reports, and AI credit usage. I think we've tapped on most of those. So I think the only thing, using the data agent is going to be important and helpful for reports. Inside of the reporting tools, you can see inside of HubSpot. So if I'm in here and if I go, I'm going to exit out of this. Go back. Very tricky, very touchy. Inside of my data agent down here. So if I'm in reporting or automations, so data management, I have my data agent here. This is for my demo account, so I can bridge in and it's giving me all kinds of stuff to get started. And so that's probably the best way to go from there. Okay. Jen asks, I don't know what I don't know, so I'm just looking for ways to streamline. Hopefully this helped a little bit. Lindsay says, I need to learn, no direct questions, but we've been trying to use this to create a workflow for names and merging data. The data hub or the data agent is going to be helpful for that. There are specific outlines, and I showed you where to find where those credits, how many of those credits are used. So it's not necessarily one-to-one credit usage. Some of these credits, like the company overview agent, does ingest 10 credits per. So that adds up fast. Lisa says, looking for an introduction to general overview. Great. I think we got that covered. How do we set up workflow or forms for these? That's all involved, and I showed you inside of the Breeze Studio, how to set those up. Mike said, looking forward to learning more. Okay. Melinda said, would like to learn more about capabilities. Nancy actually had that one twice. And how does HubSpot assistants and agents integrate with CRM workflows to improve automation and customer enablement? So if I go back, and I'm just going to go Control Tab to get into this spot. And if I'm in automation workflows, easiest way I can do this is go into Assistant inside of here. And notice that since I had Assistant open, it's going to give me an overview or result. I can actually ask it, what are my inactive workflows? And it's going to give me an overview on what those are. So you can ask it questions inside of all of these sections. And so, browse around inside of HubSpot, always look for and keep either the assistant tab open and it changes by context when you change your pages, or you can go through and literally ask. So if I'm in the set minimum deal amount on demo, I'm inside of this page. Usually there's always a spark where you can bring in. I have my tab open on the side here. So now the context that I'm asking out of this is inside of there. So that's how I would do that. And so I think that's probably almost it. So Daniel VP says, how can I use agents in Service Hub to create efficiency? We talked about the service agent, and that's going to be very helpful for you in generating new content. And that's where I would probably start. Wow, we are already almost at time. Didn't get a lot of questions from folks other than the ones that we submitted. So hopefully you're good. But if you do have additional follow-up that you'd like to connect with, you can follow up with me at dave@buzzyweb.com or at hello@buzzyweb.com. And we will give you more detail, more input, and more help that way. So hope this helped you to generate more content and to work smarter, not harder, using all of those tools. If you want to dig deeper, again, we have lead scoring in the age of AI, how to identify high intent buyers faster. The wonderful MSR and I believe Jen are going to be delivering that presentation. So I'm super excited about that one. That said, thank you all very much for hanging out with me today. I hope this helped you generate buzz without getting stung, and we will see you again next time. Talk to you soon. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.